This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Report, a show made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and with me is Andrew's going to give us this week's topics.
Well, the Pistons made one last signing this past week to finally close out free agency. There's really no other way they can sign people. We'll look back on it, give our thoughts, give our grades. And the Lions have voted or had the most bets to do something this season. We'll talk about what it is coming up.
So I'm going to take a guess and say that it is to go 0-16, right?
Can you bet on that?
I don't know. I'm sure there's got to be a prop.
Yeah, like bet the under at half a win.
Yeah, you might be able to do that, like tease it the other way. Or maybe you can do like...
Lions are the most likely.
Maybe there's a prop bet of pick your team to finish with the fewest wins in the season. Mm-hmm. You can do it that way. Granted, that's not 0-16 necessarily, but...
Well, it would be 0-17.
17. You're right, 0-17. I keep forgetting. So why 17? That's such a weird number. Like, if you're going to do...
Leave it alone.
Fair, but if you're going to do 17, why wouldn't you just do 18? It's a round number, even.
The sports... Now you're thinking like a team owner.
I understand. I understand. I don't like to side with the owners at all. But, I don't know. Anyways... What did you want to start with? Pistons, Lions? What you feeling?
Let's kick it off with the Pistons. I think we should close the book on them. We're probably not going to be talking about them for a while after this. So
probably not at least until preseason starts, I would imagine, or bare minimum training camp.
Yeah. So anyway, last week it was announced that Hamidou Diallo re-signed with the Pistons. Thank you, Jesus. On a 2-year, $10.4 million contract, way cheaper than I was thinking we were going to get him for. Also, the second year is a team option. So,
it's a prove it deal.
It's a prove it deal. I could not have asked for a better deal.
No, this is probably the most team friendly deal for Hamidou Diallo. I mean, think back for a minute. Probably 4 weeks ago when we were talking Pistons free agents and what we wanted to do with them. We gauged Hamidou Diallo's contract to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 14 mil a year.
Yeah,
and he got
5
a year. Like he got 5.25, I think it was, a year.
5.2 if you want to.
5.2, yeah, 5.2 a year for 2 years. Like that right there. That's a huge win for the Pistons. And in all reality, I think that may have a lot to do with the fact that Diallo likes Troy Weaver, trusts Troy Weaver, and understands that he's got a good relationship there. So he's willing to sign a team-friendly deal like that to go and try to make a bigger name for himself in this league. And if he ends up being a core part of this franchise moving forward, that's even better for both parties.
See, I have a different take on it. I do agree. I think that Troy Weaver and Hamidou Diallo have a mutual liking, but the Pistons waited a while to finally sign Diallo, and they fill out their roster. So it really sounded like they were letting Diallo and his agent explore the free agent market. And if I had to have my guess, I think Diallo just wasn't getting the interest he thought he was going to get this offseason.
You're probably exactly right. Don't get me wrong. I think the Pistons were willing to part with Hamidou Diallo this offseason because of the fact that they probably thought he was going to command a little bit more than they wanted to spend. Mm-hmm. And the way that the draft shaked out for them, this and how Summer League has gone, certain positions on the floor are a little bit more expendable for them now than they were prior.
Yeah.
And that opened the door a little bit more when Diallo came back and said, maybe they realized that teams didn't show as much interest in Diallo as they thought they would, and the opportunity was there.
Yeah.
And they took it, obviously. I love the deal. I've been a big fan of Diallo as a player on this team since he got here. So I have no issues with this move at all, and I think it's a good one. I think it's a smart move. I think it's there's zero negative things I can say about it. Mm-hmm. Zero.
Yeah. And now that we have him under contract again, I start flirting with the idea in my head of maybe starting K at the 1, Diallo at the 2, and then having Killian be your lead guard off the bench. and heading the bench unit.
Frankly, I think that's probably the best move for the Pistons to make. I did not like at all what I saw with Killian and Cade on the floor together in Summer League. I don't think it works very well.
I liked it defensively. I didn't like
sure,
much
defensively is great. But this isn't.
But
the
Diallo's
NBA
bringing that defense too. So that's why
but this is also not the NBA from 2004. This is the NBA from 2021 and 2022, where defense isn't forefront anymore. It's all about offense now and scoring, and teams focus on building their roster based on scoring. So when you have an absolute lack of scoring because of a certain position group you've got out on the floor, you got to find a way to change things up and avoid that. And that's what they're able to do by bringing Diallo back and having Killian Hayes come off the bench, because it doesn't make as much of a black hole there.
Yeah, because at least Diallo can take it to the rack and use his athleticism.
He can score.
He can't shoot that well, but he can take it to the rack.
He can pop a three every now and then. If he's got the open shot, he's willing to take it. But yes, he's got a lot of explosiveness. What Cade Cunningham lacks in explosiveness, Diallo brings to the floor, which makes the pairing there even better, because Diallo can bring that explosiveness. He can be the cutter, the slasher that goes to the basket, gets a great pass from Cade Cunningham while Cade Cunningham is drawing in the penetration. Like it makes so much sense to have those two paired together over Killian and Cade themselves.
No, I 100% agree. So, but I just wanted to ask you. So, how high are you on Diallo's shooting season from last year? Then, so it sounds like you do think that that's going to parlay.
I mean, I think with the focus of the defense not being on him as much because of the presence of guys like Saddiq Bey and Cade Cunningham and Jeremy Grant, I think that's going to open some doors for Hamidou Diallo to have a lot of open shots and a lot of open opportunities to where I think he can make the most of them. And I do believe that the Pistons have solid shooting coaches. They've obviously worked with Isaiah Stewart. I think they can also continue to work with Hamidou Diallo, because we saw improvement from him last year, and he can continue to improve and become a solid outside shooter, a 3-and-D type guy that would fit so perfectly on this roster.
Yeah, no, because we saw it. I agree in terms of I like the fact that Cade Cunningham's going to take pressure off guys like him. Going to take pressure off guys like Jeremy Grant. It's going to open up the floor a little bit more for everybody. But it was the reason I'm a little bit hesitant going in is the fact that I feel like Diallo had such a spike last season, and we're talking about a career 29% 3-point shooter, and then he shot 39% from three with the Pistons last year.
That's a massive spike, but
so that's why I'm still trying to I think I'd be happy if Diallo leveled off somewhere around 34-35%.
That's a perfect number in my mind. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's probably not going to be a guy who is a shoot first guy. He's going to be continuing to play his game, which is drive the basketball and make plays happen from inside with his athleticism. And that's fine. And if he can pair that with shooting 35% from outside, even better. But you also got to remember the guys he was playing with in OKC and the opportunities he was getting. When he was on the floor, the defensive attention was probably leaning a little bit more towards him than they would be some of the other guys. So he didn't get the open shots that he probably will end up getting on this team because of he didn't have a Jeremy Grant averaging 25 points a game or 20 points a game. He didn't have a Cade Cunningham or a Saddiq Bey that are all...
He did have a Russ.
Yeah, but Russ isn't exactly a big-time threat to shoot the basketball from outside. And
I think he just had Russ's rookie year, though.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't think he had Russ for very long either. And it's not like, yes, Russ commands a lot of the defensive attention, but not from shooting outside. Nobody's doubling Russ on the three-point line. Let's put it that way. And frankly, I think that with the amount of shooting that this team has between Cade, between Bey, Grant, all these guys can shoot the ball. It just opens the floor so much more for Hamidou Diallo to just do what he wants to do. If he wants to take an open shot, he's got it. If he wants to take it in, he's got it. It's available to him. And I just think it fits the duo. Not having a black hole at scoring at the two when you have Cade out on the floor makes such a big difference. Because that not only takes pressure off the rest of the offense, but it also takes some of the pressure off of Cade Cunningham, because now the defense can't just straight up ignore the two guard. and focus on not allowing Cade to make plays. Now they actually have to watch out for that threat that's there. And that's the difference that a guy like Diallo can bring over Killian Hayes. Whereas before, nobody really had to worry about Killian Hayes being a scoring threat at the off guard. Versus now with Diallo, they do. They do have to worry about that. They have to pay attention to where is Diallo on the floor. And that's going to open things up a lot for guys like Cade Cunningham and Sadiq Bey to actually do some work with the ball in their hands and get some penetration, maybe draw a double somewhere else. And with Cade's vision, he's going to find that open man. And I can bet you some of the time, at least, it's going to be Diallo.
I do think Troy did a good job this offseason addressing this team's need for shooting. Like you can legitimately think of a lineup right now that all 5 positions are threats, legitimate threats on the outside. You could talk about trying out a lineup of Cade Cunningham, Frank Jackson, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, and like you can throw Luka Garza, Olynyk. Either of them can shoot from outside. I don't think Luka Garza is. I don't know how much time he's going to get on this roster, so I'll probably go Kelly Olynyk there. But either way, those 5, all of them can shoot from the out. You can play 5 out, no win. Like
you potentially could, and you mentioned that Troy Weaver did a lot to help with the shooting on this team, but you really think about it. He made one offseason move outside of the draft that really helped this team shooting by bringing in Kelly Olynyk. Outside of that, It was either through the draft, bringing in Cade and Luka, or it was just re-signing guys that he believes in and bringing them back. Guys like Frank Jackson, Saban Lee, Josh Jackson, although he was already under contract, Hamidou Diallo, and names like that he was willing to bring back and continue to build this roster with. And now that doesn't mean they're going to be here long term, but they're threats to score the basketball at certain times in the game. So while yes, he did bring in Kelly Olynyk, who is going to help a lot with the shooting on from the big men on the floor from that 5 position, but a lot of the guys that I can't really say added to this roster, but a lot of the guys in this roster that are going to be threats to score and to shoot, we're already here. He's just continuing to roll with it, just in a revamped version. Whereas Diallo didn't quite have the space to work with last year, you better believe he's going to have a lot of space to work with this year because there's a lot of scoring threat at the 1 now. A lot of it. Yeah,
I think the other major need that's probably will be addressed next offseason is athleticism. This is not a very athletic bunch.
Well, it's Diallo could fill that hole, at least some of it.
And that's another reason why I love the Diallo.
Exactly,
re-signing.
And that's another reason why I do feel like Troy Weaver wanted to bring him back, is because he does fill that hole of athleticism quite a bit. And if he steps up and plays a big part on this roster and helps them win some games, which I absolutely think he can, then maybe that hole gets filled a little bit there, and if not totally. This guy had huge expectations coming into the league, so let's see if he meets some of those. Yeah.
I think him and Saban Lee are the 2 best athletes on this roster by a long shot.
Potentially, yeah. Josh Jackson's a pretty solid athlete as well, but those 2 guys definitely are the best athletes on this roster by far.
So
Isaiah Stewart's a pretty solid athlete too. That dude's got a lot of bounce.
Overall, what are your feelings on this Pistons offseason? Because, first, actually, before we get to that, I do want to know who you think gets cut to make way for Diallo.
There's 2 names that I've seen thrown out, and I agree with both of them. One of which I think makes more sense than the other for sure. But the 2 names I've seen thrown out the most, and the 2 names that actually do come to mind for me, are Jahlil Okafor and Sekou Doumbouya. And I bring up Doumbouya because I just don't think that this front office likes him all that much. I haven't seen him get a huge opportunity and take the opportunities he's been given and make the most of them. I understand he's only 20 years old, but the Pistons may be looking at a situation where maybe we aren't willing to take on a project that could take another 4 or 5 years. We want to start building this roster and continuing to build it and start hitting a stride a little bit here. And we need to fill that roster spot with somebody else. So that's possible. He is the less likely option in my mind because he is still 20 years old. He's younger than most of the guys in the roster at this point. So I don't see why they would be willing to give up on him just yet. But you've seen flashes of them being willing to give up give up on him throughout the regular season last year. Because he just hasn't made the most of the opportunities that he's been given. He's had 2 years in the league now, and he hasn't really done anything. And he didn't really do anything in summer league either. His defense improved from what I could tell, and he's solid there. But outside of that, that's it. That's all he brings, outside of a flash here and there. But the other guy that I think is the most obvious is definitely Jahlil Okafor.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with you in terms of, like, I'm not too optimistic about Sekou at this point. However, I think I still have reservations about cutting a 20-year-old.
I completely agree with you. That's why I said he's the less likely option, the one I would be less happy with.
The two I'd look at, and I'm not even sure if my second guy. No, I think he can be cut. I think you'd have to eat some money on him, but it's not going to be a lot. But the two I would look at is I would agree with you 100% on Jahlil Okafor, and I think he's the most likely because I think with the Garza draft pick and the Kelly Olynyk signing.
And the fact that Garza's played really well in Summer League. I think that right there. I think Garza playing well in Summer League actually opened the door for the Pistons bringing back Hamidou Diallo a little bit because whereas the 5 would have been a bit of a hole behind Olynyk and Isaiah Stewart, somebody else got to come in and eat some minutes. Well, now it may be Garza. Instead of having Ja Okafor come in and do it, Garza may be able to do that.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it becomes a situation where I don't see where Jahlil Okafor gets minutes on this roster.
I don't either.
Especially when you consider they signed Trey Lyles too. Even though I don't really want to see him play much, but
no, I don't even want to see him here. He doesn't like us here.
And the other name is Rodney McGruder. Even though we just waived him,
I was going to say we just waived him and brought him back.
We could just really look indecisive and waive him again.
That's just another guy I just don't understand where he gets minutes unless there's injuries, which is entirely a possibility.
The interesting thing about Rodney McGruder, though, is in the limited stretches that we saw him last season, I liked what I saw.
He wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible.
But again, he's like this. He's a 30-year-old guard. You know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah. Nothing about him makes me say, Rodney McGruder.
He brings shooting to the table, which make me want to keep him over Ja Okafor. But
yes.
But I think I agree with you. I think Ja Okafor is the most likely cut candidate here.
100%.
Even though McGruder is technically the same position as Diallo, so that would be the 1-1. But I still agree. So yeah, looking back,
a lot of guards.
Yeah.
A lot of guys that can play that wing type position. I mean,
because you have a lot of inexperience at guard, so you need depth.
You do. I mean, you talk about Frank Jackson, Saban Lee, Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, but then also we've got Hamidou Diallo, Josh Jackson. Both those guys can play that 2-3. Josh Jackson even can move up to the 4. You've got Bay that'll play the wing, Grant that'll play the wing.
Very undersized 4.
Yeah, he's done it before. He did it with Miami. He's even done it here a little bit. He just has that length and wiriness to him that he can play out of position and still be effective defensively. He's just a pest.
Did I miss the stint that Josh Jackson played Miami? That's the first time here.
You know what? I might be thinking of. I am thinking of Justice Winslow for that. Josh Jackson was with Phoenix.
But either way, looking back at this offseason in the whole, I mean, I think at this point there's only 2 moves that I didn't like, and they're both smaller things. I didn't really like the signing of Trey Lyles.
So you mentioned Josh Jackson. Sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned Josh Jackson being undersized 4. He is the exact same size as Jeremy Grant. 6'8", 207. 207 to 210. Yeah, they ain't different. Anyways,
I always feel like Josh Jackson's a little more like he just seems smaller than Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, he does. Maybe disagree.
Jeremy Grant just plays bigger. I don't know, but
that's probably what it is. Anyways, continue with what you were saying.
So there's only 2 small moves that I wasn't a big fan of. That was the signing of Trey Lyles, and that was
still don't like it.
Then it was making all 3 of your second round picks because you clearly don't have Ball says already a stash. He got signed overseas on a 3-year deal, so. I mean, he's one of those guys that's like 2 years away from being 2 years away. Like it's.
Yep. It'll be a minute before we ever hear his name again.
And
outside of Pistons give up his draft rights.
Luka Garza impressed me in summer league, but I still have to take it with a grain of salt for the summer league. Isaiah Livers we didn't see because he got hurt, but I wasn't a huge fan of those selections. But I'm I guess I'm starting to eat my words a little bit on Garza, but we'll
I
see
mean,
what happens.
I after what I saw in Summer League, and I know I am the number one person that says Summer League does not matter at all. But Garza coming in, dropping 30 pounds is just a different player.
Yeah, that's something I
altogether.
didn't know when we drafted him. That was something I didn't know.
He's just a different player altogether, and we saw it in Summer League where his mobility is there, whereas it wasn't at Iowa. And it's he carved himself out a role on this team from day one at that point. So
yeah, he looks like it helped him improve as a post defender, but it's still evident that as soon as you take him out past like 7 feet past the rim, you're gonna blow right by him.
well, I mean, how's that any different from guys who are mainstays in the league like Enes Kanter? I mean, Cantor's carved himself out a huge role on a lot of good teams, and I think Garza can do that with a good Pistons team as well.
But I think the good far outweighs the bad. The contract that you got Diallo on, the fact that you're able to bring back Frank Jackson, the giving of drafting Cade Cunningham, the upgrade.
And that's the biggest one right there.
Yeah,
like that,
the upgrade of my belief from Mason Plumlee to Kelly Olynyk. I think it's an A- offseason for me.
I think the Olynyk one is an upgrade. I just didn't really love the contract they got him on. I'm willing to give
team
that
option.
Like
the team option softened that one for you,
it did
right?
soften that one quite a bit. I'm willing to give that one like a B-, B. But for the offseason, I'll give him an A-. It's hard to give less than an A grade for a team that brings in the number one potentially generational talent in the NBA. And I know that's through no control of their own outside of just making the pick that was handed to them. But regardless, it's like saying taking Andrew Luck when he was there was not a great offseason, but it was. Like it's just a fact. So it's hard to give anything less than an A or A- to Troy Weaver in their offseason. He made a lot of good moves that I liked.
They drafted the guy that they needed to draft. They retained the guys they needed to retain, and it made it.
Let me ask you this. Because outside of Cade Cunningham, this roster is very similar to last year's roster. Very similar in a lot of ways. Does that at all give you any cause for concern with the fact that we are talking about a team that finished second to last in the NBA last year? I know they did tank towards the end, but they still were a bad basketball team when they were trying to win.
Yeah.
Does that give you any cause for concern that we very much have a pretty similar roster to that team?
No, because I'm still not expecting much this season. We're still a very, very young team. I do think we still need to continue to build through the draft. I think this upcoming free agency 2022 is actually, I think, going to be a big one for us. So
then let me ask you this.
I'm going to really weigh it more on how we look after next offseason, because that's where I think the money's going to be spent.
Positionally speaking, where do you go in next year's draft? Put your stake down right now. Where do you go in next year's draft?
I'm going one of two ways. Well, there's a specific type of player, and ideally, I want to get a shot creator, a guy who can create his own shot and knock down that shot. So someone who's like instant offense, and ideally, I want to place him alongside the two, playing either alongside Cade or alongside Killian. Even though I hope the best for this dual ball handler, dual offense initiator thing they're going to try out with Killian and Cade. I just don't have faith in it unless Cade works that jumper.
Unless Killian can hit shots. That's how it works. You have for that to work, you have to have both guys be a threat to score the ball.
Is it weird that I was more encouraged and discouraged about Killian shooting in Summer League?
Yes, that is very weird.
Because I noticed a pattern. This is something that was touched on
because his numbers were not good.
This was if you look at the numbers, but it's something that was touched on last year. And if you look at Killian, when he's shooting with the ball, like when he's shooting off the dribble, he tends to kind of turn his hips and kind of. This is like one of the first things you learn in basketball. When you shoot, square your hips. Catch and shoot, he actually shot close to 40%. Squared hips, he's just catching the ball, popping it. But he just shot off the dribble so much and never squares his hips when he shoots off the dribble.
Except we're talking about a guy who is probably going to be having the ball in his hands a lot.
Yeah,
not going to be a ton of catch and shoot because he's not a wing. He's a point guard.
Yeah, but so what I'm getting at with it though is I fully believe it's something that's fixable. Like I'm seeing what works and what doesn't work already, just visibly eye test.
I don't disagree with you that it's fixable but the thing that is giving me a little bit of concern about Killian and whether or not he's going to be able to get his shot to work is we've been talking about how good his shot looks now since he was drafted. It just has never been able to fall. And that right there is giving me some concern because, okay, he's got a great looking shot, good form, tweak something here and there, and then it'll start falling. Well, it hasn't started falling. And that's where you just start to not really say it, but that's where you start to wonder if maybe he's not actually a great shooter. Maybe he just doesn't have an eye for the rim at that point. He's not able to get it. He doesn't have the confidence. Maybe it's mental. It could be something along those lines where that's why the shot's not falling.
I think it's 100% mental because I think it goes hand in hand with what he does when he's in the paint. He never attacks. He always goes for a floater. And I think it's the same thing when he's shooting the ball. He's more trying to almost shy away from. He doesn't have the confidence to square back up after pulling the crossover with having the ball in his hand. Like he just wants to get that shot up as soon as possible.
Well, if that's the case, that worries me quite a bit more. If it's mental, because
but confidence is something you gain with experience.
Yes and no. Ben Simmons has been in the league for how long? His confidence is at an all-time low.
Well, I don't think Ben Simmons' shot is a matter of confidence.
No, but again, though, there are several guys in the league that when they don't have if the confidence isn't there, they can't make a shot. It doesn't matter how good it looks.
Yeah.
Confidence isn't something that's a guarantee. It's not something that's easily fixed either. And it's not something you can help a guy fix either. It's got to come from within, and it's got to come from his own mental fortitude there. And if he doesn't have it, he may never be able to get it. Versus if it's a tweak in his shot you got to make, maybe tuck the elbow in or square up a little bit more. That's something a coach can help him with and help him fix. That's something you can have some control over. But if it's mental, I do
think that's a big part of it.
I do too. But if it's something that's mental, I don't know if there's a coach in the world that are going to be able to directly help him with that. And that's what scares me a little bit. Yeah. So, but anyways, no.
It's something you hope to see with him because he's dude's chiseled. Like the guy, he's a big dude. Like he should be able to use that body to down low and attack the basket rather than just put up floaters every time.
100% agree. But to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, the guy that I'm looking for in the draft is a shot creating wing. An athletic shot creator, not necessarily even a wing, but an athletic shot creator, guy who you can put the ball in his hands and he can do something with it, but not necessarily command the basketball, so to speak. Maybe something like a Michael Bridges, a guy like that who can play a really solid defensive game, but can also do something offensively if he's called upon. Something along those lines. A player of that prototype that can do something with the ball in his hands, but play a really solid defensive game, can also shoot a little bit, but doesn't necessarily command the basketball and take it out of the hands of guys like Bay, Grant, and Cunningham.
Yeah.
Now, my other question for you, though, and you mentioned...
Well, I think there's one other major thing I feel like does need to be addressed in terms of what we pick up next year. Maybe not doesn't have to be through the draft, but maybe just through free agency. We currently don't have a guy that can bump bodies down low with Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis. We don't have guys that can guard that kind of height.
There's not many of those in the league. Not anymore, anyways.
Just in general, I think we need to add some height, some defensive height to this roster.
I'll agree with you there. Now, my whole standpoint is, and kind of going off what you said, that you don't feel like this team is ready to win yet, and you want them to continue building through the draft, and you think they should. My thought process is, with Cade Cunningham being on this roster, with Jeremy Grant, Sadiq Bey, and how they've progressed, and Isaiah Stewart as well, I don't know that I'm looking at having this team continue to build through the draft as much anymore.
Well, I don't want them to tank. Let's be honest. Let me put it right there.
No. Like, I'm not looking at them to, I don't look at the next key piece of this roster to be coming from the draft, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. What I'm more looking at the next key piece of this roster to be a free agent addition that immediately causes them to compete. And I'm talking compete for the top end of the East because when you look at this roster, make a big
splash next year.
100%. And I don't think that one of the key pieces of this roster is going to be coming through the draft anymore. I think they've got their core, they've got their key pieces on this roster now that have come through the draft or from whatever signings they've made. now they just need to continue to add to that. So when we look for a guy in the draft, I'm not really looking for a cornerstone type guy anymore. I'm looking for a supplemental guy, and then my other cornerstone guy or key piece is going to come from free agency because I want that veteran addition. I want a guy that, because when you draft a rookie, a lot of times you got to ease them in, you got to build them up. Well, the clock is going to start ticking after this offseason with this team. Yeah. Because Grant's going to start to get older, and some of the guys that you bring to this team are going to start not necessarily aging because they're all still very young, but the contract clock is going to start ticking, and that's where some of these guys are going to be very expensive to bring back. So adding a key guy that is a veteran to this team, 27, 28-year-old guy that fits the mold of what you need. Well, if that fits into this roster and you add that, well, this team may be competing for a top spot in the East. And that's what I'm looking for this team to continue doing. So I'm not really looking for them to build through the draft anymore. I'm more so looking at them to just continue building and adding to what they have gained from the draft. So, in other words, I'm expecting this team to make a splash in free agency this offseason and then compete next year. Not this upcoming season, but next year is when I want this team to start competing.
I'm right there with you.
Like, I will probably
think this upcoming offseason will be key.
I will probably be disappointed if this team misses the playoffs next year.
You're gonna have a lot of money coming off the books going next.
Oh, absolutely. So, anyways, though, anything else to add before we pivot over to the Lions?
No.
All right, so let's switch it over. It's been a rough preseason to say the least, and I know there's no weight added to preseason. Granted, there are some things you can take out of it, and I wanted to kind of talk before we got into the thing you mentioned that the Lions are getting the most attention for, potentially doing this year. I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things and with preseason and training camp that it kind of stuck out to me, and one of those primarily had to do with, or this topic kind of primarily has to do with Dan Campbell's press conference where he mentioned, I'm paraphrasing here, but because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he mentioned that there are guys that you would believe are solid locks to be on this roster that are not going to be here. They are not, their jobs are not safe. And I wanted to kind of go through some things with you and speculate as to who some of these guys may be. And I also wanted to mention a couple other guys that I think need to, for a lack of better terms, shit or get off the pot here. So are there any guys that you would think most people would believe would make this roster that you think are in danger of getting cut?
I would have said 2 weeks ago that most people believe this person would make the roster, but I think that belief might have dampened after his performance against Pittsburgh, and that's Jelani Tavai.
He is my number one.
Most people would think they make the roster because of how recently he was drafted and how high he was drafted. He was a second-round pick 2 years ago. Right. But he's looked god-awful. I mean, I don't know if you saw the play where Najee Harris turned a corner on him. And
he was 15 yards away. Oh, yeah. Well, the worst was, it just as bad was on that, I believe it was on that same play where Jeff Okuda's 15 yards away from Najee Harris, and Najee Harris does a little head fake, and you would have thought Jeff Okuda broke his ankles. Like, I expected to see Jeff Okuda on the injury report come Monday morning, but no, he wasn't. That was brutal tackling.
The sad attempt from a NFL starting linebacker at a tackle. It's the worst tackle attempt I've ever seen, I think, in the NFL. It was terrible. He could have stopped them basically at the line of scrimmage, maybe a couple of yards out, and instead it was like a 50-yard run.
100% agree. Like, Jelani Tavai has had one of the worst preseasons of any guy that you would have thought was a lock for the roster going in. Yeah. Like, this dude can't do anything right or anything well on the defensive side of the ball. Like, he looks lost. I
don't think I can count on one hand how many assignments he blew. just what I saw.
It's multiple hands. You might even have to use your toes. Like, it's bad. How bad he has been in this preseason. And this is preseason we're talking about. Like, put him in live game action, it's going to be even worse. Like, this dude is just not very good, and it was a huge miss by Bob Quinn. And I thought it was, we wondered back then, is it just Bob Quinn trying to be the smartest guy in the room to go up and grab Jelani Tavai? Like, And there's a reach.
The Patriots liked him a lot, so we have to get him before the Patriots.
I think Bill Belichick was sitting there going, because there was somebody else that they actually wanted. Like they just swindled Bob Quinn into taking this dude from Hawaii that straight up sucks. Like he's not good at football.
It's a draft strategy as old as time.
And frankly speaking, like how I wanted to kind of preface, like the question I wanted to come in hard with for this topic was, are Jelani Tavai and Jeff Okudah actually good at football? Or have we been lied to this whole time?
Literally one of the first plays I saw from the game, I was watching at the bar, and I will admit that I didn't catch every single play because I was distracted with the conversation. But one of the first plays I saw, I look up, and I see Deontay Johnson score a touchdown, and the Steelers were like 50 yards out at the time. So I'm like, what the hell happened? I'm watching the replay, and I'm like, oh, he just absolutely put the burners on Jeff Okudah. Yeah. Jeff Okudah was like 7 yards behind him in like 2 seconds.
There were several plays in that game where Deontay Johnson straight up mossed Jeff Okudah. You would have thought it was Tease Tabor out there running a 40 behind Deontay Johnson. That's how slow he looked. Like it was brutal. And it's not like we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins here. We're talking Deontay Johnson. Don't get me wrong, he's solid wide receiver in this league. But he's not the guy that you would want to be, he's not the guy that you would want to be burning the corner that you took number 3 overall. Like this corner that you took number 3 overall, you got to compare it to guys like Jalen Ramsey, who hit the ground running immediately and were really good. And by that, I mean they were islands. You didn't throw the ball their way. And frankly, right now, if I'm game planning for a game against the Lions, and Jeff Okudah's lined up outside against one of my receivers, I don't give a damn who it is. You better believe I'm going to target him 10, 11, 12, 15 times in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know damn well he ain't stopping me. Not the way he's played. He straight up does not look good. And then I brought up the fact that Najee Harris from 15 yards away put on one of the dirtiest... I can't even call it dirty because it wasn't that good of a move. It just made Jeff Okudah look like a child. Did you see that play?
No.
Go look it up. Look it up. Najee Harris breaks Jeff Okudah's ankles. He was literally 15 yards away from him, and he managed to drop him on his ass with a head fake. Like that's embarrassing. And this guy was taken number 3 overall. Don't get me wrong. I'm not giving up on Jeff Okudah. I can't. I don't have it in me to do it yet. But he has shown me nothing. No reason to make me believe he's actually a good football player, a good corner in this league. And do I think he can be a good corner in this league? Yes. I'm starting to believe he can't play man. That's for damn sure. Because you got Deontay Johnson burning him all up and down the field.
From judging from what I saw last year and just so far as preseason, he's clearly too slow to play man.
He's clearly a cover 2 corner or cover 3 corner. Like he cannot play man coverage. Not in this league.
But and I because I have a rule of thumb when watching cornerbacks. It's
you don't want to see him.
How often do I see your name?
Yep. How often do you see or hear the name?
Like I have one of my cousins. He missed the game, and he asked me. I was talking to him like the next day, and he was asking me, "How did Melifonwu do?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't notice him, so I guess that's a good thing."
That's a good thing. When it comes to cornerbacks, if you don't see their name or hear their name, they did their job. They held their man because they didn't throw their way. That means their man didn't get open. And in the case of Okudah, you probably couldn't see his name very much because he was 10 yards behind the man he was supposed to cover. It's just, I don't know what Bob Quinn saw in Jeff Okudah in the draft or what, but it wasn't pretty. Or it hasn't been pretty. And I know he didn't really get a training camp. He didn't have much of an offseason before. But things have not looked good for Jeff Okudah. And I actually just lost Andrew. I believe he just lost power. So I'm going to finish this out myself. But it's been a rough go for Jeff Okudah, and he's got to be a lot better. But the other guys I was going to mention that you would have thought would be roster locks, but are, I think, on the verge of getting cut, are Jalen Reeves, maybe the linebacker. He just continues to not make plays. And he wasn't already a huge name to begin with. I know he's more of a special teams guy, but who knows? And then the other one, which may surprise people, is Rashad Perriman. Dan Campbell doesn't exactly seem too happy with him, and that receiving room is crowded right now. Not necessarily with a lot of good talent, or a lot of talent, but it's crowded. And there's going to be names that have got to go, and his is probably going to be one of them. You're going to see some surprise cuts from this Lions dressing room, and some of them are going to be ones that you say, oh, yeah, it makes sense, and some of them are going to be, But this team obviously has a goal of retooling this entire thing, and they don't really care where a guy was drafted or what he did for the team before. So who knows? But it's going to be an interesting looking team. So, and to talk about, I'll spin things over to the other topic that Andrew wanted to talk about, and that was something that the Lions are getting the most attention for that you wouldn't expect them to. And he brought it up to me, and I was kind of shocked by it. But the Lions on BetMGM are actually getting the most betting action to make the playoffs this year. The most betting action to make the playoffs. Yes, I said that right. Yes, you heard that right. To make the playoffs. And, my first question was, are the odds just that good? Because I wouldn't believe it to be true. You look at the roster, the way it's shaped up, you look at how they've played in the preseason, and it isn't pretty. I know we haven't seen the quarterback. I know we haven't seen DeAndre Swift. We haven't really seen TJ Hawkinson either, but it hasn't been pretty on either side of the ball. And yeah, there's been some bright spots defensively. I think Derek Barnes is a player, but this team doesn't look very good. And for them to be getting the most action to make the playoffs, according to BetMGM, that kind of took me back a little bit. I went, really? How? Why? Who's betting on that? And like I said, the only thing that I could think of is the odds got to be that damn good. So that obviously brings us to the next question of what's it going to take? What's it going to take for the Lions to be that good? And the first thing that came to mind for me was, Jared Goff's got to come back with this Pro Bowl performance. He's got to be that guy. He's got to be the guy that took the Rams to the Super Bowl. And I know he wasn't the reason, but he played well enough to make it happen. DeAndre Swift's got to come out and be a 1,500-yard all-purpose guy. Someone in that wide receiver room's got to be way better than we think they're going to be. TJ Hawkinson's got to put his name up there with guys like Kelsey, Kittle, Mark Andrews. He's got to be a leader offensively. And then on the other side of the ball, you've got to get somebody over there that steps up in a way that blows everybody away. And I mentioned a couple of guys like Derek Barnes, and actually, Andrew, welcome back.
That was super random. You're in the middle of talking, and all of a sudden, everything in my house goes, the whole lights go out, power just cuts. I'm like, and then 30 seconds later,
let me tell you, it's not easy to do a podcast by yourself.
I'm surprised you kept it going.
I did. I tried anyways.
I was gonna tell you, like, yo, we could just, magic of editing, splice it together.
Yeah.
I did not expect you to keep it going.
I did. I basically went through, and the other two names, we'll circle back a little bit, but the other two names I mentioned as potential cuts that you would think would make the roster, Jalen Reeves-Maybin has not impressed. The other one's Rashad Perriman. That pretty much has to do with Dan Campbell's comments of he ain't exactly impressed with Perriman. Mm-hmm. So
I wasn't impressed with the signing.
No, I mean, you know what's
Everyone's
sad?
Like, that's our wide receiver too. I'm like,
You know what's sad is he's still probably a better name receiver than 85% of what you have in that wide receiver room.
I've been touting the fact that I think our wide receiver core is almost non-existent.
Terrible.
Like, we're looking for breakouts. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're banking on. And you hope
it's guys that could potentially be a part of this future, like Quintez Cephas, like Amon St. Brown.
Those are the two that you're hoping can break out.
I mentioned the what the Lions are getting the most attention for, the action, and the fact that they are the most bet-on team, according to BetMGM, to make the playoffs this year.
Yep, if you're wondering, it's plus 700 odds.
That's it?
I want better odds.
Just to give me...
That's
hell yeah,
from
dude.
BetMGM, bet 700 odds.
Just to give me an idea, what are some of the teams around them? Like, give me some of the teams around them and their odds. Like, what are the Jaguars to make the playoffs?
I'd have to pull that up because it's literally just, and I'll show you on my screen, it's literally just one bet that's showing up, and it's the Lions to make the playoffs.
Oh, so it's boosted odds too.
It's not boosted. It's just promoted.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, here we go. I found it. So you said you want the Jaguars?
Just give me some of the teams around them.
So Jacksonville, well, it's not in order, but Jacksonville's plus 350 to make the playoffs.
Really? Interesting. Okay, next.
You want the Bengals
Sure.
plus 450.
Really?
Panthers plus 240.
All right,
Falcons
So, I mean, the
plus
Panthers.
225.
The Panthers, I actually think have a legit shot. The Falcons are what?
Plus 225.
Really?
How about the G-Men?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Any guess?
Plus 500.
Plus 225.
Really?
I'm not taking that bet.
No.
How about
I don't
the
think I'd
Jets?
take any of those. Except the Panthers, I'd probably take. Jets, plus 650.
You're awfully close. Plus 600.
Okay, so the Lions have, like, the highest odds to make the playoffs. In terms of, like, the most money you could make.
Yeah.
That's why people are betting them. That makes a little more sense. Because in all reality, like, are the Lions, can you sit here, right now, and say that the Lions are definitively the worst team in the NFL?
Yes.
You know, now that I say it out loud, I kind of can too.
Just how, and I know it's just preseason, but I've been saying from the beginning, for us to have any shot at even sniffing a playoff berth, all those question marks on the defense side of the football need to be big
answered.
pluses.
Yep.
And right now, our starters on defense, just as a collective, look terrible. So
The secondary looks god awful, and a lot of that's predicated on the fact that guys like Jeff Okudah, Will Harris, that you hope would take a big step up, have not. The line, actually, I think the defensive line will be the lone, can't say bright spot, but less dull spot on the defensive side of the ball. And offensively speaking, I mean, you look at what they've got there. Penei Sewell really hasn't impressed that much at the right tackle spot. I'm willing to give him some time because it is an adjustment for him. And
playing different
I still
position.
think the guy is an absolute stud. And we obviously haven't seen DeAndre Swift. I am going to say, though, I'm starting to worry a little bit about DeAndre Swift and his durability. Much like we were saying with Kerryon Johnson, the guy can be a good running back. Granted, jury's out now. Like, we know he can't be a good running back because he doesn't know how to find a hole. But DeAndre Swift, we know, can be a good running back.
he already got cut by the Eagles.
Exactly. Dude can't find a hole. And then they go and lose Travis Etienne. That's brutal.
Yeah.
But we know Swift can find a hole. And we know he can be a good running back. But he hasn't been able to stay healthy at all. And we haven't gotten to see him practice really at all because of the groin injury. So are you starting to worry at all about him and his durability?
Considering everything we know is from his rookie season and pre his sophomore year, I'm not going to hit the panic button yet. But the fact that he's already had 2 injuries and he's not even in his second season yet, you can't help but have a little bit of concern.
It's giving me cause for concern.
I'm just trying to be unrealistically positive and say, he's still young. None of those injuries are permanent injuries, lingering injuries.
Let me ask
You'll be
you
fine.
this. In terms of the guys, because we obviously want and expect DeAndre Swift to be like 1,000 yards rushing, 500 receiving, right? Guy that 1,500 all-purpose
especially
yards.
with an extra game. Yeah,
Yes, like 1,500 all-purpose for sure.
yeah.
So the guys that would probably put him in the upper echelon of the league. The guys that you would consider to be threats to do that, year in, year out. Most of them probably hit the ground running from their rookie year. I mean, you look at Dalvin Cook, who I believe he did get hurt. Was it his rookie year or his sophomore year he got hurt?
I think it's sophomore.
Sophomore year, okay. And then you bring up some of the other guys. Christian McCaffrey, he hit the ground running his rookie year. There a lot of these guys really.
Oh no, it was his rookie year. Sorry.
Okay, but he started
And
off
his sophomore year.
He started off on his rookie year, didn't he? Or did he just miss the whole year?
No, yeah, no. He played 4 games at 350 rushing yards in 4 games.
I mean, it's not awesome, but it's not
pretty
bad.
good.
It's pretty good.
That's an average of 88.5 yards a game.
Yeah,
in your
I mean,
first 4
that's-
games as a rookie.
What, 1,200 yards, roughly? Give or take?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty damn good. But,
Actually, 1,400, but
yeah, sure. Quick math.
quick math.
But it does give me a little bit of worry about DeAndre Swift and his ability to stay healthy. And then, we haven't really gotten to see TJ Hawkinson either. So we haven't seen Jared Goff at all.
Yeah.
But offensively speaking, like, I just don't see a ton of threat potential here. We're not going to be able to throw the ball downfield. That's problem numero uno. So there's no point in playing a cover 3 or cover 4 against us because nobody's going deep.
But I do like that you bring up the Dalvin Cook thing, though, because that is a running back that played 15 games in his first 2 years.
Yeah,
so it's basically half
did.
of the half. Like, he played less than a season in 2 seasons due to injuries.
Right.
And
so I mean, there is potential
came back
for,
and has been relatively durable the last 2 years. So
and also electric in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there is obviously still hope for a guy like DeAndre Swift to recover and still hit the ground running and be that guy that we want him to be.
But
he's got to get his body right.
Before we get too far away from that BetMGM topic, I do want to give you one quote. This is courtesy of M Live, and I just wanted to know: is this the most delusional Lions fan you've ever heard of?
Oh God!
Zach Pashak, a Detroiter, recently spoke with M Live after betting $1,000 in the Lions to win the Super Bowl, another $1,000 on them to make the Super Bowl, and another $1,000 on them to win the NFC North. It was pretty funny. Pashak said, "I tried to place the bet, and the cashier at first refused to bet on the grounds that she didn't take bets from people who had no shot to win. She thought it was an unwinnable bet."
I think you can take the word. This quote?
No, because this was just published today.
I've heard this quote before. Like, I'm 100% positive by this.
But all I'm saying is thought should be taken out of that sentence.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's no way. Like, what are the odds for the Lions to win the Super Bowl? Whatever it is, it's probably going to be like plus 2,500 or something. It ain't enough.
It's going to be crazy.
It ain't enough. The odds for the Lions to win the Super Bowl this year should be like plus 50,000.
Detroit Lions to start 4-0, by the way, is plus 15,000.
Plus 15,000?
To start 4-0.
Wow.
I don't see on... Oh, here we go. Plus 25,000.
25,000? It should be at least double that.
Would you like to know what the odds are of the Detroit Lions to go 20-0 and win the Super Bowl?
I'm going to guess plus 250,000.
Plus 500,000.
Oh, I even sold it short. Jeez.
Throw a dollar on it just for fun.
I mean, you'll win $5,000.
500,000? Yeah.
Yeah, you'd win $5,000.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather go buy 4 gumballs.
I agree.
I just... I wanted to ask the. We wanted to ask the question.
Did you want to know the 0-17 odds?
Yes.
What would you put them at?
Plus 1,000.
Plus 2,500.
Okay. All right. Fair. So obviously, when we did this topic, we wanted to ask the question of what would it take for the Lions to make the playoffs, and I kind of touched on it a little bit while Andrew was gone. But Andrew, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think it would take for the Lions to make the playoffs? Like
I said a little bit ago, and what I said in previous podcasts, there's a lot of question marks on this defense. Those question marks need to turn into pluses. I need to see Jeff Okudah be the cornerback that he was hyped up to be coming out of college.
Be the guy we drafted him at number 3?
Exactly. I need to see these linebackers. I need to see Derek Barnes, for example. I want to see Derek Barnes impress me.
I'm not going to lie to you. I have been impressed with Derek Barnes in the preseason. I have been.
One guy that I needed to see turn things around was Giant Tavai. Doesn't look like it's happening.
No, he's a cut candidate.
Aruwariye, I wanted to see him come to his own. I didn't hear his name called much preseason so far, so I'm not too worried about that.
Probably has a lot to do with the fact that you can't hear enough of Jeff Okudah's name.
Yeah. I need to see how the starting defensive line plays. And from what I saw, not too much pressure is being put on the quarterback, at least the starters. So nothing really going there. In general, I need defense, because I already know this offense is going to
ugly.
struggle. Yeah.
Like, I'll take it a step further and go talking about the offense side of the ball. And I brought this up while you were figuring out your power situation. But it does, for this Lions team to make the playoffs, Jared Goff is going to have to play Pro Bowl football. He's going to have to be the guy that took the Rams to the Super Bowl and made a Pro Bowl. Like, he's got to be the guy that can be effective, even though he doesn't have the best weapons out there. And does he have it in them with the targets he's able to throw the ball to? Probably not. I wouldn't expect him to anyways. Like, I straight up think that they've kind of set Jared Goff up to fail a little bit here. And they're basically saying, if you can make something out of this, all right, then you're a pretty damn good quarterback and you deserve to play in this league. But if you can, well, then you are what we thought you were. So Jared Goff has to be able to make something out of nothing with this offense in terms of who he's got to throw the ball to. And that's going to, if he's able to do that and be effective offensively, make this offense not absolutely god awful, then they've got a shot to make the playoffs. But that's what it's going to take. Because in this league, in this day and age, you can't have a god awful offense and expect to go anywhere with it at all.
Yeah.
So it is going to be a lot on the shoulders of Jared Goff. So if they want to win, he's got to be the guy that takes them there.
So I have one betting related question that I wanted to close out with, unless you have something else you want to get to first.
Nope. Let's hear it.
Okay. So with the Lions being plus 700 to make the playoffs and that team seemingly being a popular bet with BetMGM, they're also plus 800 for the win total to be under 1.5. Which bet are you taking if you had to take one?
Make the playoffs or under 1.5 wins?
Yep. Plus 800 for, you get a little bit better odds actually with under 1.5 wins. You get plus 800 versus plus 700.
I'll take the under 1.5 wins because, and here's my reasoning behind it. There's not a single game this season that they are favored in. Yeah. One, they will be the underdog in every game. Two,
you're basically just parlaying a bunch of
exactly
bets that are favorable bets,
right? Like in all reality, you're allowed
to have one of them not hit.
You probably would be better off parlaying all 17 of their games as losses, or 16 of the 17 just rotating the one out, making 17 different parlays. Or it'll be a hell of a lot more than that, actually. Yeah. But anyways, picking a game that you think that their best chance to win is. And just taking them all that way than it would be to place this bet. Because you'd have a lot higher odds if you can parlay from week to week. I don't know if you can do that or not. Yeah. But either way.
Yeah, it would require you picking the right game they lose. But
right.
Or they win.
They win, right.
Yeah.
But the odds would be a lot better.
I still definitely take the under 1.5.
I would too. And the under 1.5, absolutely. Because you look at their schedule, there's not a lot of wins out there. That you can sit here and say, okay, I think they can beat that team. I know we went through the schedule and I think we picked, 5-6 wins in a 17-game season, and I felt like we were being kind of nice, saying that they can split with a team like the Bears, saying that they can split with a team like Minnesota, or beat, I believe it was Cincinnati. Teams like that. Like, those are games that they potentially could win, but we're kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned the Bears. I wanted to bring up one more question before we close out here. I've seen a lot of Lions fans and a lot of local media talking about how the Lions made a mistake taking Penei Sewell over Justin Fields the way Fields has played in the preseason. How do you feel about that?
It's the same thing I was talking about with Cade and Jalen Green. You can't already be saying that a pick was a mistake. And, I was coming in, not coming in the draft, but, coming out of the season, I was all aboard the Justin Fields train. I got convinced into Penei Sewell once we traded Stafford. Would I have complained had we taken Justin Fields? No. But I do 100% believe, based on need and based on talent, that Penei Sewell is the right pick, and I'm not going to sit here and say 2 preseason games with Penei Sewell playing out of position or something to make me think otherwise. So, no.
I agree with you 100%, and I'll even go take it a step further and say that I don't think the mistake was passing on Fields to take Sewell. I think the mistake was not taking Tua Tagovailoa the year prior. Or one of those quarterbacks. Justin Herbert, you mentioned it. I think that's where the mistake was made. I still think Sewell was the right pick over Justin Fields, because when their careers are all said and done, I think Sewell will be looked at as the more accomplished or better player between the two of them. Because I don't know that the ceiling is that crazy high, for Justin Fields. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he can be something in this league. And I know I mentioned the Ohio State curse several times in this show, but I think he has a chance to be the best quarterback to ever come out of Ohio State. Bar's not exactly set high.
Yeah.
But I think he can be a good quarterback in this league. But am I going to sit here and say that
agree
I
with
think
you.
he's a generational talent, a generational quarterback? I'm not ready to say that, and I'm not willing to say that right now. I am, however, willing to say that I do believe Penei Sewell is a generational talent at the tackle position. I think he could be a generational player in this league. I think his name could be up there with the Joe Thomases of the world. And that's why I say it, the Penei Sewell pick was the right pick. You're building from within. A rugged, tough offensive mindset. Win from the inside out. And that's why I say that the Sewell pick was the right pick over Justin Fields. And I still believe that they should not have taken Jeff Okudah. They should have taken a quarterback in the year prior. If you would have told me that you had Justin Herbert and then you followed up the next year with Penei Sewell, well, you got a pretty damn good football team now, don't you?
Yep.
Things would look awful different here. Think about it that way. So, anything else to add?
That's everything I got.
All right, let's close it out. That's going to be it for this week, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience as Andrew's power decided to take a nap for about 5 minutes. But we will see you guys.
It just started storming now. Like,
Really?
I'm so confused.
Like, it's been storming here for a minute.
Oh, I just heard my first thunder just now.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
But anyways, guys, thank you for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at RealFanReport. Give us your thoughts and let us know if you made the bet on the Lions to make the playoffs. I'm curious to see how many there are of you out there because obviously there's a lot.
I ain't doing it.
Nope, not me either. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast as well. We will see you guys next week. Andrew, thank you for joining me. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
Poor fans.
Catch you guys later. Have a good one. Peace out.
Peace.